Hello there. I hope you're all doing well today, or at least getting through this confusing time and finding ways to manage and take care of yourself and do the things that you need to in order to get through this time and get to the next stage of life and what's going to be coming to us next. I think one of the hardest things is that we don't know exactly what that is, and we don't know the timeline for it. So I just wanted to check in with you, and I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind a lot recently. And I think one of the most disturbing things for me with the whole virus and the things that I've seen and the responses I've seen isn't really even about the virus itself. This is just sharing myself from some of the more challenging things that I have noticed that's come from this time. When we first found out about this COVID-19 and we learned that we were going to need to have some changes in our daily life, at least for maybe a week, 2 weeks or so, everyone stopped with the strong opinions about what should be done. Everyone was just kind of in a state of wonder and trying to figure out what they were going to do. It was like everyone was all on the same page. We were all in this together. We were all trying to figure out where we were going to go next and what life was going to look like for us. And it seemed like that, at least for a brief period, the concern was more, how are we going to support each other and how are we going to get through this and how are we going to be okay, than it was about politics and who's doing the right thing and who's taking care of us, who's not taking care of us. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because as things have settled down and as we have gotten a little more comfortable in our routines and gotten a little more comfortable with the idea, at least somewhat, of this virus that's going around and the potential threat that it poses and the potential threat to our economy and to small businesses, and the effects are definitely widespread. But I think as we've gotten more comfortable with these ideas and with our position at home, our tendency to develop opinions and to state them strongly has come back. And I think that's one of the most difficult things for me to see, to be really honest with you. And I know a lot of people may not agree with me on this, but I wanted to share a little bit about where our opinions tend to come from, kind of from a developmental standpoint, and how we gain these beliefs, where they develop, and what we tend to do as humans based on how we're kind of wired up. When we're born into our families of origin, there tend to be circumstances, even political states, religious beliefs that are the norm and are expected in the environment that we're raised in. And those tend to be the first ones that are accepted by us. Our families and our environments teach us what's acceptable and what's not. And most of us accept those and carry on with those for some time. Some of us enter into different systems and different social structures and meet different people, and our opinions and views change as time goes on based on those that were around. But I think the important thing to remember is the way that our opinions develop is based on where we came from, and is based on the people that we're surrounded by, and is based on the environment that we were exposed to as we grew up. And there's nothing wrong with these things. There's nothing wrong with the environment that we developed in. There's nothing wrong with our family's political beliefs, and there's nothing wrong with taking those beliefs on. And there's nothing wrong with agreeing with them and supporting our family members. I'm definitely not saying that. But I think that one of the keys to unlocking some of this emotional control that I think some of us could benefit from in our sharing and in our speaking with each other is to understand where these things come from and how these strong opinions develop. And I think that's one of the keys to determining and actually being intentional and conscious about what we share with other people and how we share it. Some of us have come from backgrounds where there's a lot of trauma. Some of us have come from backgrounds where there is a lot of stability. We all come from someplace different. People that have come from an uncertain background tend to view the world in a way that is much different. There are constant threats in their environment, and that mindset tends to go on as people grow up and as they become adults, and in their social circles and in their political beliefs and in their religious beliefs. Those views and opinions are carried on, and they're applied to other situations too. So for example, if you don't feel safe in your family home, or if you don't feel safe at your school, or if you don't feel safe with the government that was in place when you were young, then chances are you're going to continue to question things as you go on. It's just kind of the way that our brain processes things, and it's a normal response that if things were to stay the same as they were at that time, that would be the most effective. But the reality of it is things do change, and situations do change, and circumstances change. Certainly, I don't think any of us have lived through a pandemic before. We're in a situation right now that I don't think any of us have ever faced. So some of those beliefs and interpretations and understandings that we had in other times in our life that were applicable and were constructive at that time, they don't necessarily fit right now. They may, but they may not. And I think the important thing to take into consideration is that we need to think about where our strong emotions and our strong opinions come from before we share them, at least before we share them in a intentional and forceful way with other people. I think that it's easy to see a situation and have kind of a knee-jerk reaction to it, or a strong feeling or belief. And as soon as we start to have those feelings, we feel like, man, I need to let people know about this. They need to understand what's going on with me. It needs to be known because either this is an injustice or this person is doing wrong. And the reality of it is, that is everything that our body and our internal structures tell us. This is wrong, and there's reasons for that. They may be reasons that are unique to us, but there are legitimate reasons that our bodies and minds respond the way they do. But the danger in acting from those places and not having a greater awareness of what those places are is that we're not using the constructive parts of our brain that allow us to work well with other people. We're not thinking about the needs of those next to us. We're not valuing the other person's perspective and where they came from. And while theirs may not be something that we understand or something that makes sense to us, even something that we feel is not right, it's still something that someone else grew up with, and their feelings and convictions are just as strong as ours are, and that's at no fault of theirs and at no fault of ours. But we do have the ability and the power to take ourselves out of that place of that knee-jerk reaction, that immediate emotional response as soon as we hear some new news, as soon as we learn of what's happening in our world. We do have the ability to remove ourselves from that emotional response and move into a place where we can make a conscious decision about how we want to act and what we want to do. And we can decide, is this truly, for the benefit of all those who would hear it? I certainly have quick and strong opinions, and sometimes I'll ask my husband and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling right now. Is this going to benefit anybody if I share it? Because sometimes my own mind will help me figure that out, and sometimes I need an extra, person to bounce it off of. I need to be able to ask, hey, is this really going to help somebody, or am I just kind of, sharing my own strong opinions. Again, nothing wrong with my opinions, but I have to decide if it's really going to benefit someone else to hear them or if it's going to cause more pain. So I guess what I encourage you to do today, and what I'm trying to do myself, is to, if you're of the Christian background, if you're of the Christian faith, there's a scripture that talks about taking each thought captive and making it obedient to Christ. If you are of more of a, well, some of the other religions, some of the other dissents talk about mindfulness, being in the present moment and thinking about where your emotions are coming from, where your feelings are coming from, and where the desire to act stems from. There are a lot of well understood, and well, I don't know if well understood, we're still learning a lot, but there are a lot of accepted philosophies and beliefs that are based around this concept of thinking about our feelings, figuring out where they came from, and then determining if it's helpful to share it or not. And I just encourage you during this time, especially when we're all on edge, we're all nervous, we're all trying to figure out what's going to happen next, and we all want the best for families, for each other. We want health and we want well-being and we want our country to succeed. I just really encourage that you would take each thought you have before you act on it, before you share something, before you comment on something, and determine whether or not what you have to say is just a very important belief that you have or something that's going to be helpful for another person, and encourage them and lift them up during this time. One of the things that's the most painful to me is to see this feedback and these things that tend to go around on social media that can be so hurtful and degrading of other people. And politics aside, I mean, some of it is political, but it really isn't even about the politics that I'm discussing. It's more about the heart behind it and the content. I don't share my political beliefs often, and quite frankly, a lot of that is because I am still wrestling with and trying to figure out what those are. I have beliefs, I have understandings, just like everyone else does, but I think there's a lot of gray areas. So I hope, and that's when I step back into that kind of critical mind, that I can look at the emotions and determine how to incorporate those with the reality and truth that I know of what's beneficial for everyone. So I just hope that you're all doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourselves, and I hope that we can work together on this to love and care for one another and strengthen each other. And thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.